I've just judged one of the most interesting plant growth challenges I have ever seen. Stick around with me and let's dive into it. Hi, my name is Memo, this is my channel, Houseplantygoodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me, it's tropical houseplants. As I just said, I judged a plant growth challenge recently, which was super interesting. So just to paint you a picture of kind of what that was. So over an 8-month period, a lot of the people that were taking part of the challenge were taking a plant from stage A, so it might have been quite young, it might have been a seedling, it might have been a kind of rooted cutting, it might have just been a cutting, and growing it to whatever growth they could get within that 8-month period. And this was a great way for people to showcase what they could do with a singular plant over that stretch of time, where they could take this plant within that 8-month period. So if it was a small plant, could they get it huge? Or if it was a established plant, could they get it fuller or bigger? All of these things. And it was really interesting to see all the different entries and to see the befores and the afters as well. But ultimately, what's really intriguing about this challenge and what really kind of drew me to it was that it was something to do with growth. It wasn't about getting the biggest plant or the tallest plant, but it was talking about the care that people were giving to the plant. And I was very honored and very touched by the organizers who reached out and said, would you like to be one of the judges? And I'll come on to more on that in just a second. And from my 3 winners, I can give you a little bit of a hint as to the fact that one of them started with almost nothing and ended up with a very nice established plant. Another plant, or at least the owner of that plant, seems to have done everything right in terms of its care. And one classic aroid had the most kind of textbook amount of growth that you would expect within that period of time as well. So as you can see, different things happened basically, but overarchingly it was the importance of how that growth kind of translated within that 8-month period. So very quickly, how did this all come about? And I promise I'm getting to the winners straight after this section basically. So I was invited by a plant growing community called Chop and Grow, and they said, look, we are doing this plant growth challenge and we're doing it over several months where people can start with a plant at stage A and get it to stage B, and it will be judged not just by somebody like yourself, somebody that reached out to me, somebody who was a YouTuber, and I was, as I said, very honored to be even considered by all this, but also by the community itself. So I think that was a really cool thing. It wasn't just kind of going, oh, there's a YouTuber there, they can give the final score. No, it was the fact that the community itself, much of the individuals who took part as well, were the ones judging it. So I think that was really cool. Everything was anonymous throughout the process, or at least it was for me. So I have no clue whose plant this is, any of the background, any of that. And I think that was good in order to keep it as fair as possible. And in my case, I was literally just seeing the before and after pictures. So I literally just had those 2 data points to go off. So this is what plant looked like, this is what the plants look like at the very beginning, this is what they look like at the end. So yes, as I promised, let's go into the winners straight away. So the first winner, at least the way that I judged it, and I will bring up a picture of what the plant looked like before, and you can kind of see it. It's a very cool plant, and this is a plant that I have wanted to grow for a long period of time. I've grown plants that were very similar to this. So I had the Alocasia Gagiana variegata. But to me, I think this is the Alocasia macrorrhiza variegata in some form. I think there's a splash form that might be different from a slightly variegata. This is what I mean. I have no context. Literally all I got was, this is the plant at stage A and this is the plant at stage B. So if these are your plants by any chance, please be nice to me, because I can only go with what I'm seeing and the experience that I've had over the years as to being able to identify some of these plants. And I won't lie, one of the 3 plants, I still do not know exactly what plant it is, and that will make sense when you see it. So this is what this individual started with, and here's a picture of what the plant looked like at the end of that 8-month period. So as you can see from the 2 different pictures, the difference within that time period is quite large. And part of the reason why this was my #1 winner was because of the not just the growth that happened within this plant over that 8-month period, and this is a layer that I kind of put in when I was looking at it, was the difficulty. Anybody who has grown alocasia knows they can be quite challenging at times, and I know I've heard this from all of you several times on my videos. Add to that the fact that it is a variegated alocasia as well. So that adds an extra level of difficulty and trickiness. And keep in mind, this wasn't the only kind of difficult or challenging plant, but this, at least in my opinion, was the one that showed the most consistent and most impressive growth within that 8-month period. And it showed that a lot of the care that was given to this plant, again, knowing how challenging it can be, was quite impressive. And I think the other thing that we need to consider as well, and this is something that I did consider specifically for this plant when I was judging it, look at the plant. Hopefully I've got both images now. This is going to be a editing memo thing. The plant, when it first started, was very, very young. I'm trying to think now because I haven't got the picture in front of me. I think it was either a corm or a corm with just a couple of leaves and maybe a root or two. It is impressive that it went from that early stage to that bottom stage without really any noticeable issues along the way. And alocasias are one of those things that will tell you if there were issues along the way because of the way that the plant grows and the leaves grow in that kind of one singular growth point, basically, where if you were to lose leaves along the way, you would see gaps within that growth. And I saw none, and I saw consistent and good growth within this plant. This is obviously the reason why this plant impressed me the most. And I think that's the important thing as well. This is part of the reason why I took such great enjoyment with judging this competition or this challenge. I keep saying competition challenge. It's, in my head, it's very similar, really. But it was very interesting because it was so fun to see all these different plants and kind of where they got to within that short time period as well. Because ultimately it might seem like a long period of time, like 8 months seems like an eternity for some people. For a lot of the times for plants, it's really just a drop in the ocean because some of these plants might be growing for 20, 30, 40, 50 years happily, basically. So 8 months in that great scheme of things really isn't that long. And to see consistent growth and impressive growth within that short period of time was very, very fun. It was really interesting to see, like, look at this grown in probably what is probably very ideal conditions for this plant. And this is, again, a boon for the people that were growing this plant, or the individual that was growing this plant. They did really, really good. Really, really good. And the other thing that I'll add here as well, because there were so many different plants, was it wasn't about the rarity of the plant. It was about the kind of experience and the kind of process of what needed to be done in order to get these plants happy. And ultimately, it was more about the health of the plant over the hype of the plant or the rarity of the plant, the care over the speed. So a lot of the times, and some of the kind of entries that I was looking at, there was 1 or 2 plants that were very similar, or they might have even been the same species from what I could see. And it was, I had to judge it on the care, not just the size. So one of them might have got it bigger, but the care might have not been there because it might have had a few blips along the way. And one of the others might have been a bit smaller, but it grew perfectly throughout that period of time. So these things all needed to be taken into consideration when judging this. And I thought that was really interesting. And it's really interesting to see how different conditions and different care could ultimately result in the same plant or a very similar plant with a different result after the same period of time. But let's have a look at my second and third place winners. So the second place winner is the plant that I was mentioning earlier on, is the one that I can't necessarily tell what the species is on that plant, and you'll understand. So I'll put the original picture at the top there, and it's a bit unclear from that picture, and some people might be going, oh, it's this specific alocasia, and I hear you, and you might say the same thing when you see the resulting kind of picture, so after the 8-month period. So hopefully at the top I'll have the beginning and the end at the bottom. Yes, I hear you, and I could easily kind of assume that it is the plant that we're all thinking it is. But I don't want to make that assumption, because actually that specific alocasia and the look of that specific alocasia, there are a lot of hybrids, cultivars, or even species that can show up in the same way. So with this one, for me, in my head when I was looking at it going, this is Alocasia X. I don't know 100%. If you are the person that grew this plant and you see this video and you want to share down below which specific alocasia it is, please do so. For nothing else, I'd love to know what specifically it is. But this is a plant, again, that had consistent growth. It had good care that was given to it throughout because of the way that it sized up, the way that it kind of kept most of its leaves, the way that you can see that huge jump that happened between the early stages of this plant and the later stages of this plant. So this had to be my second place winner, even with a bit of the mystique of just like, what is this plant right here, basically. So yes, it is another alocasia. I promise it wasn't just alocasias that I was judging. It just happened that it was two alocasias in the first two spots, basically, with this one. But again, you can see it's drastically different. This one isn't a variegated alocasia. The other one was a variegated alocasia. And you can see that it was quite challenging for myself to judge this as well, because everybody within the competition or the challenge kind of went out of their way and produced some great results. And my third winner is the Philodendron L. Choco Red, at least from what I can see from here, or the Philodendron Rubri Juvenile. And this, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this was one that there was two that within the same challenge, two different individuals did the same plant. So this one was a really interesting one because even those two entries, I'm just like, this is so close, this is so close. But I think, in my opinion, this one, and again, I'll put the early stage of the image at the top, so what it started with, and at the bottom I'll put the kind of end result, and you should be able to see the difference there in terms of the growth and what happened over that 8-month period. But for me, this is kind of textbook growth for Philodendron L. Choco Red. I have also tried to grow this plant multiple times at this point, and I know that it's not one of the easiest plants out there, for a fact. So the fact that both of these challenge entries, both this one and the one that isn't in the top 3, did as well as they did with this specific plant is exceptionally impressive as well. So I'm taking all of these context clues into consideration when I was judging these 3 plants, or actually the whole of the challenge, actually, but these 3 being my winners. But you might be asking yourself, it's like, what did I see throughout the entire competition? Because I kind of started with the fun bit at the beginning and gave you the winners straight away, but I want to dive into a bit more as to kind of what I saw as a whole, basically. And it was that there was an exceptional amount of care that went to all of these plants. And I was mentioning earlier on, it looked different from everybody. It looked different even within the same plant. I was mentioning the El Choco Red, that there was at least, and again, I'm sure that I'll be corrected if I was wrong, but at least as far as I can see, there was 2 El Choco Reds, and it was so interesting to see the different growths that happened within those 2 different plants and those 2 different individuals, their conditions and their care as well. And I cannot stress this enough. There were so many plants that were so close, because I kind of gave them all like numerical scores just for my own sanity when I was kind of scoring it up. And we are talking about fractional differences, like fractionals, like points. So kind of like 8.9 or 8.7. Do you see what I mean? Like there were slight differences. By the way, those weren't the numbers. This is just me pulling it out of my head. But it was fractional differences between the kind of top 3 winners and the ones that didn't make the top 3. But everybody did such a great job, and I cannot stress that enough. I was floored, and I'm sure the community that was also voting for these plants among the community were probably saying something very similar to me. I was also massively impressed by some slow-growing plants that were part of this challenge that were grown exceptionally well. And actually, I was surprised by how much growth those individuals managed to get out of these slower-growing plants within that 8-month period. And to you all, hats off, because that was a very specific and very interesting kind of way of going into this competition, going, I know I'm going in with a slow plant. And that might be kind of counterintuitive for a lot of people, but I know that I can do well. And you all did spectacularly. And there wasn't really any obvious forcing of growth. And if that ever had happened, it would have been quite obvious from the kind of early stages of the images to the later stages of the images. So kind of the beginning and the end. And it was so nice to see that people tried their best to try to get as much, I hate using the word, but kind of organic growth within these plants as possible. Did they give them the best conditions? I would imagine that they did, based on the results as well that I was seeing. But there wasn't, as far as I could tell at least, there wasn't any shortcuts that were taken. Not any kind of obviously glaring ones that are just like, well, really? No, everybody kind of did it properly. And obviously this competition couldn't have happened without the community at Chop and Grow, and they've got a website as well. I think Chop and Grow is not just a community, it's also a web shop. Lovely, lovely individual that runs the business as well. And I will add the links down below. Please do check out the website. It's really, really nice in this day and age, especially if you're based in the UK, because if I'm not mistaken, they are based in the UK, to kind of support some of these smaller businesses rather than just the big, huge kind of entities that deal with plants. And it's nice to kind of still try to prop up some of these younger businesses when they're going in, especially when they are going out of their way to do things like this, where they essentially are giving back to the competition, to the community, not the competition, but like, and to mention that there was awards and prizes that were going to be given to some of these top positions, not just from the judges' point of view, but from the community point of view, so which is really, really cool. So this business gave a lot of their time and effort to kind of set this up so that people can take part and have a bit of fun along the way. I think we've all forgotten how fun things like this can be without it getting too serious and too competitive, because ultimately we're all doing solitary hobbies here as well. Like, we're not all like in the same room growing these same plants. Like, we're not, do you know what I mean? It's everybody's doing this in their own space, in their own time, within their own kind of life requirements. And to see this being done so well was really, really heartening as well. And it's nice to see that these things are still happening. So yeah, the community feel as well within the kind of, I think there was a Facebook group, if I'm not mistaken. So within that Facebook group was really, really sweet and really kind of caring and encouraging towards each other. So that was really, really nice to see as well. And it's something that I said, it's not something that's missing entirely from the plant community, but it's something that, at least in my humblest of opinion, I'd love to see more. And big props to Chop and Grow for kind of providing that platform, because trust me, we have, I can talk from personal experience of all the different talking events and workshops and things like that that are doing, because a lot of people on the side of this will go, this is really easy to set up. It really isn't. There's a lot of finagling and try to get everybody organized and admin that goes behind this, and time from everybody's time that was going to be doing this, the people that are taking part, the people that are organizing it, the moderators within the community, reaching out to people like me, like the judges taking the time to do it. This is a lot of things. So it's nice when the community comes together and can provide something back, something that's a bit of fun, really. But ultimately, we need to start looking at things like this and just kind of taking a step back and just kind of considering that care is key with a lot of these plants. I've talked about this on kind of more recent videos, prediction video. There's another video that I did. I don't know if it's going to come out before or after this one, where I dive into a bit more as to the overwhelming feedback that I got from the community from that prediction video, into how kind of plant care is changing and what success might look like as well. And one of the big things that came up, spoiler for the next video, again, don't know if you've seen it already or if it's going to be coming out, is the fact that care is important. It's becoming more and more important, and it's nice to see competitions like this where that can be kind of highlighted and celebrated to kind of show, you know what, this is what this could look like, rather than just getting all the plants out there in the world and having the massive collection. Care is becoming a huge thing, which is rightly so, and it's something that's coming back to the original kind of footprint of what having houseplants was all about, is caring for these plants and getting them to be happy and healthy and growing consistently. And the thing is, it's not about having the rarest plant out there, but it's getting consistent growth. It's getting a growth that you're happy within this plant, for it to be something that you enjoy. Yes, it could be for other people to look at and just go, I'm so impressed, which part of that was part of this competition, for people to say, ooh, look at that. But it's also like the knowledge that I did that. And I think that is the other big thing that I want to say to all the people that took part. Big pat on all of your backs. This was a lot of work and you all did amazingly well. Do remember that, because everything that I saw was amazing. Like, you did so good over that short of a period of time, just flawed, absolutely flawed. And remember, consistency beats hype every single time. It really does, because you wouldn't have all been able to get your plants to go from that stage A to stage B in 8 months without that consistency. It shows, and it shows. And I think that's the interesting thing, because we can all see this within the community, and hopefully there's enough people within my community who look at these videos and will be able to go for the three plants that I was kind of highlighting. Look, that's how it started, that's how it went. That's impressive, because we know intrinsically, because we do it with our own plants and our own collections, what that means in order to get that plant from that stage A to stage B. Absolutely fantastic. And I know I sound like I'm gushing in this video, but it was so cool. I've not been this excited like a kid for a very long time to see something like this and to see all the work that everybody put into it. And as I said, I'm hoping that companies or kind of communities like Chop and Grow do more of this. I think the community would love this. My humblest of opinions, please do shout out down below if you would like more of these kind of challenges or competitions to be out there and available to all of us, because as I said, it's a solitary, I like to joke that this is a solitary sport that we all do. Like, it's not, it's very, very odd or very kind of unusual for us to be interacting with each other people that are doing the solitary sport, so to speak. So doing stuff like this kind of gets that sense of community. And I've not been to one event or anything like that where the community does come together, where people have left and just gone, I really didn't like that. Yes, there's people that are kind of very introverted and they want to stay within their shells, but even a lot of them are just like, I really enjoyed that. And I really enjoyed other people that are like me, who's probably other introverts as well. And you could all take that moment to just go, oh, we all like the same thing, and we can geek out, and we don't have to hold back. Because when you're talking about plants to people who are not plant people, we all know the glazed look that they all get on their eyes going, are you done talking about plants now? And just that, no, I haven't. I'm not done talking about plants. We're going to keep going. Yes, thank you. With other plant people, that's not a problem. Hours of conversation. But yeah, let us all know what you thought of the competition itself or the challenge. Again, big shout out to Chop and Grow for doing something like this. Very, very cool. And big props to you as well. I know this took a lot of time, basically. And yeah, let me know if you kind of agree with me on the challenge winners. Please be nice. Obviously, like, you can have issues with my opinions on things like this, but do remember that a lot of people took a lot of time and effort to get the plants to where they need to be. But yeah, hopefully you have all enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. And I truly hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thanks. Bye.